Hello, everybody. It's Miss Tiffany again. Welcome to Miss Tiffany Reads. So, yesterday, again, as I indicated earlier, LJ has asked about my characters on our first day, why I wasn't dressed as Winnie the Pooh. And so I've been dressing as Winnie the Pooh. Yesterday, my outfit was inspired by Christopher Robin. And I wonder if you can guess who today's outfit is inspired by. So for those of you who are familiar with the characters from Winnie the Pooh, I'm going to give you until the end of the story to maybe leave a comment about who I'm dressed as. But I'm going to say that I'm wearing pink. And I have pigtails. Ugh, who am I dressed as? All right, so I'll let you leave in the comments who you think I'm dressed as. Today we are reading chapter 4, in which Eeyore loses a tail and Pooh finds one. All right, so again, welcome to Miss Tiffany Reads. I'm reading chapter 4 of Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne, and we're just going to jump into our story. The old gray donkey Eeyore stood by himself in a thirsty corner of the forest, his front feet well apart, his head on one side, and he thought about things. Sometimes he thought sadly to himself, "Why?" And sometimes he thought, "Wherefore?" And sometimes he thought, "Inasmuch as which?" And sometimes he didn't quite know what he was thinking about. So, when Winnie the Pooh came stumbling along, Eeyore was very glad to be able to stop thinking for a while in order to say, "How do you do?" in a gloomy manner to him. "How are you?" said Winnie the Pooh. Eeyore shook his head from side to side. "Not very how," he said. "I don't seem to have felt any how for a long time." "Dear, dear," said Winnie the Pooh. "I'm sorry about that. Let's have a look at you." So Eeyore stood there, gazing sadly at the ground, and Winnie the Pooh walked around him once. "Why, what's happening to your tail?" he said in a surprise. What has happened to it?" said Eeyore. "It isn't there." "Are you sure?" "Well, either a tail is there or it isn't. You can't make a mistake about it. And yours isn't there." "Then what is?" "Nothing." "Let's have a look," said Eeyore. And he turned slowly round to the place where his tail had been a little while ago. And then, finding that he couldn't catch it up, he turned round the other way until he came back to where he was at first. And then he put his head down and looked between his front legs. And at last he said, with a long, sad sigh, "I believe you're right." "Of course I'm right," said Pooh. "That accounts for a good deal," said Eeyore gloomily. "It explains everything. No wonder." "You must have left it somewhere," said Winnie the Pooh. "Somebody must have taken it," said Eeyore. "How like them," he added after a long silence. Pooh felt he ought to say something helpful about it, but didn't quite know what. So he decided to do something helpful instead. Eeyore said gloomily, "I, Winnie the Pooh, will find your tail for you." "Thank you, Pooh," answered Eeyore. "You're a real friend," said he. "Not like some," he said. So Winnie the Pooh went off to find Eeyore's tail. It was a fine spring morning in the forest as he started out. Little soft clouds played happily in the blue sky, skipping from time to time in front of the sun as if he'd come to put it out, and then sliding away suddenly so that the next might have his turn. Through them and between them, the sun shone bravely, and a copse which had worn its furs all year round seemed old and dowdy now, beside the new green lace which the beeches had on so prettily. Though copse and spinney marched bare, down the slopes of gorse and heather, over rocky beds of streams, up steep banks of sandstone, into the heather again, and so at last, tired and hungry, to the 100-acre wood. For it was in the 100-acre wood that Owl lived. And if anyone knows anything about anything, said to Bear himself, it's Owl, who knows something about something, he said. Or my name's not Winnie the Pooh, he said, which it is, he added. So there you are. Owl lived at the Chestnuts, the old world residence of a great charm, which was grander than anybody else's, or seemed so to Bear. Because it had both a knocker and a pull bell, underneath the knocker there was a notice which said, "Please ring if answer is required." Underneath the bell pull there was a notice which said, "Please knock if an answer is not required." These notices had been written by Christopher Robin, who was the only one in the forest who could spell. For Owl, wise though he was in many ways, able to read and write and spell on his own, WOL, yet somehow went all to pieces over delicate words like measles and buttered toast. Winnie the Pooh read the two notices very carefully, first from left to right, and afterwards, in case he had missed some of it, from right to left. Then, to make quite sure, he knocked and pulled the knocker, and he pulled and knocked the bell rope, and he called out in a very loud voice, "Owl, I require an answer. It's Bear speaking." And the door opened, and Owl looked out. "Hello, Pooh," he said. "How's things?" "Terrible and sad," said Pooh, "because Eeyore, who is a friend of mine, has lost his tail, and he's moping about it. So could you very kindly tell me how to find it for him?" "Well," said Owl, "the customary procedure in such cases is as follows." What does crustimony precede cake mean?" said Pooh, "for I am a bear of very little brain, and long words do bother me." "It means the thing to do." "As long as it means that, I don't mind," said Pooh humbly. "The thing to do is as follows. First, issue a reward. Then, just a minute," said Pooh, holding up his paw. What do we do to this? What you were saying? You sneezed just as you were going to tell me." "I didn't sneeze." "Yes, you did, Owl." "Excuse me, Pooh. I didn't. You can't sneeze without knowing it." "Well, you can't know it without something having been sneezed." "What I said was the first issue, a reward." "You're doing it again," said Pooh sadly. "A reward?" said Owl very loudly. "Write a notice to say we will give a large something to anybody who finds Eeyore's tail." I see, said Pooh, nodding his head. Thinking about a large somethings, he went on dreamily. "I generally have a small something about. Now, about this time this morning." He looked wistfully at the cupboard in the corner of Owl's parlor. "Just a mouthful of condensed milk or whatnot, with perhaps a lick of honey." "Well then," said Owl, "write out this notice and we put it up all over the forest." A lick of honey?" murmured Bear to himself. or not, as the case may be. And he gave a deep sigh, and he tried very hard to listen to what Owl was saying. But Owl went on and on, using longer and longer words, until at last he came back to where he started. And he explained that the person to write out the notice was Christopher Robin. It was he who wrote the ones in front for me. Did you see them, Pooh? For some time now, Pooh had been saying yes and no, in turn with his eyes shut, to all that Owl was saying. And having said yes, yes the last time, he said, no, not at all. Now, without not really knowing what Owl was talking about. Didn't you see him? Didn't you see them? Said Owl, a little surprised. Come and look at them now. So they went outside, and Pooh looked at the knocker and the notice below it. And he noticed at the bell rope that the notice below it, and the more he looked at the bell rope, and the more he had seen something like it somewhere else some time before. Handsome bell rope, isn't it? Said Owl. Pooh nodded. It reminds me of something, he said, but I can't think of what. Where did you get it? Okay, I have to pause here and show you the picture so that you can see Owl's bell rope, because it truly doesn't have the same effect without seeing it. Okay, let's get the lighting quite right. Sorry. So, if you look really closely, there is, I know it's a little fuzzy, there is a bell rope and there's a note underneath it. Do you guys think that thing is something specific? I think I know what Pooh is thinking. So he says, I just came across it in the forest. It was hanging over a bush, and I thought at first somebody lived there. So I rang it, and nobody happened. And then I rang it again very loudly, and it came off in my hand. And as nobody seemed to want it, I took it home and... Owl, said Pooh solemnly, you made a mistake. Somebody did want it. Who? Eeyore, my dear friend Eeyore. He was fond of it. Fond of it? Attached to it, said Winnie the Pooh sadly. So, with these words, he unhooked it and carried it back to Eeyore. And when Christopher Robin had nailed it on its right place again, Eeyore frisked about the forest, waving his tail so happily that Winnie the Pooh came over all funny and had to hurry home for a little snack of something to sustain him. And wiping his mouth, half an hour afterwards, he sang to himself proudly, Who found the tail? I, said Pooh. 1:45, only it was 11:15 really. I found the tail. Wow. So that's a really funny story. I love that one. So Winnie the Pooh discovers Eeyore, and Eeyore is feeling pretty gloomy, only to find out that Eeyore has actually lost his tail. Winnie the Pooh helps him to find the tail, and he goes to the smartest animal in the forest, who is Owl. And when he gets to Owl's house, he discovers that Owl has a new bell pull for his house to alert him that somebody's outside. He looks at the bell pull and is a little confused because he knows that he's definitely seen this bell pull before. So he keeps kind of thinking about it in the back of his mind as Owl is talking in his very long and drawn out speeches with very big words that he overemphasizes. And while Owl is talking, Pooh continues to think about it and is like, wait a minute, I think that's Eeyore's tail. And it certainly is. Owl encountered the tail in the forest at some point and decided, hey, this would make a very fancy bell pull for my house, since whatever it's attached to is not answering out here. So that's incredibly funny. So Pooh saves the day again and returns the the bell pull / Eeyore's tail to him. Yeah, Princess Nala is asking if that's irony. I do think that is a bit ironic. It's the opposite of what we were expecting to happen. It is definitely quite a bit of luck, because I suppose anyone could have found the tail, but what are the chances of the tail being found in the place that the first person that Pooh encounters for help is? So really, really funny story. So thank you guys for watching today and listening to Winnie the Pooh with me. Thank you for coming to Miss Tiffany Reads on the Org Bahamas page. We will pick up again on Monday and read chapter 5, in which Piglet meets a heffalump. So back to my first question of the day, when I asked, who did you think I might be dressed as? So I have the pigtails and I'm wearing pink. Which of the characters, if you're familiar with the stories, which of the characters from Winnie the Pooh do you think that I am? It's Piglet. So Lothario, this one is for you. I am wearing my Piglet inspired outfit, and I hope this story was great for you and great for everybody else. Join on Monday when I will be dressed as another character from Winnie the Pooh, and let's see if you guys will be able to guess which one it is. Thank you for joining me at Miss Tiffany Reads, and I will see you again on Monday at 11:15. If you like this video, please share it with others. First like it, and then share it with others so that they can join in the story time. Bye-bye. See you on Monday.